Welcome back to Psych to Sleep, the channel where we dive deep into the most fascinating character analyses, hypothetical scenarios, and gaming crossovers that keep your mind engaged while helping you drift off into peaceful slumber. I'm your host, and tonight we're embarking on an absolutely incredible journey that combines two of the most beloved franchises in their respective mediums. The supernatural powerhouse that is Gojo Satoru from Jujutsu Kaisen, and the punishing, methodical world of Dark Souls 2. Before we begin, I want to thank all of you who have been subscribing, liking, and leaving your thoughtful comments on our videos. Your engagement and suggestions drive the content we create, and tonight's topic actually came from several of you asking what would happen if we took some of anime's most overpowered characters and translated them into the mechanical frameworks of classic RPGs. Gojo Satoru was mentioned more than any other character. And when we started brainstorming which game system would best accommodate his reality-bending abilities, Dark Souls 2 emerged as the perfect candidate. Why Dark Souls 2 specifically? Well, several reasons make this the ideal framework for our analysis. First, Dark Souls 2 has the most flexible magic system in the entire Souls series, with 4 distinct schools of supernatural arts: sorceries, pyromancies, miracles, and hexes. This gives us the mechanical foundation to represent Gojo's diverse curse techniques. Second, the game's stat system is incredibly granular, allowing us to create a character build that truly captures the essence of the 6 eyes and limitless technique. Third, Dark Souls 2's unique mechanics like adaptability, agility, and the way invincibility frames work actually provide interesting parallels to how Gojo's infinity technique operates. But perhaps most importantly, Dark Souls 2 is a game about overcoming seemingly impossible odds, about facing creatures and challenges that should, by all rights, be beyond human capability to defeat. In many ways, this mirrors the world of Jujutsu Kaisen, where sorcerers regularly face cursed spirits that represent humanity's darkest fears and most destructive impulses. The parallel between a chosen undead seeking to break the cycle of the curse and a jujutsu sorcerer working to protect humanity from supernatural threats is remarkably strong. Now, when we talk about translating Gojo Satoru into Dark Souls 2, we're not just talking about making an overpowered character who can steamroll through the game, though he certainly could do that. We're talking about creating a mechanically interesting, lore-appropriate character build that captures the essence of what makes Gojo unique, while still respecting the fundamental design principles of Dark Souls 2. This means his incredible power needs to come with appropriate costs, limitations, and strategic considerations. Throughout this analysis, we'll be examining every aspect of how Gojo would function as a Dark Souls 2 character. We'll start with his base stats and character build, then move through his various abilities, equipment options, and how he would handle the specific challenges that Dark Souls 2 presents. We'll discuss not just the raw power of his techniques, but the resource management, timing, and strategic thinking required to use them effectively. One of the most fascinating aspects of this crossover is how Gojo's personality and philosophy would adapt to the world of Drangliak. Gojo is confident to the point of arrogance, but this confidence is backed up by genuine, overwhelming power. In Dark Souls 2, even the most powerful characters can be brought low by carelessness, overconfidence, or simply making the wrong choice at the wrong moment. How would someone accustomed to being essentially invincible adapt to a world where death is not just possible, but inevitable and expected? We'll also be considering how other players would react to encountering a Gojo build in PvP scenarios. Dark Souls 2 has one of the most active and competitive PvP communities in gaming, and introducing a character with Gojo's abilities would fundamentally change the meta. We'll discuss potential counters, strategies, and how the community might adapt to the presence of such a unique and powerful build. The technical aspects of this analysis required extensive research into both source materials. We've carefully studied every technique Gojo has demonstrated in the manga and anime, analyzing the mechanics and limitations of each ability. We've also done deep dives into Dark Souls 2's code and mechanical systems, understanding exactly how stats, resistances, and various gameplay systems interact. This isn't just surface-level theory crafting. We're building something that could theoretically function within the game's actual mechanical framework. For those of you who might be new to either franchise, don't worry, We'll be explaining concepts from both as we go. If you're not familiar with Dark Souls 2's stat system, magic schools, or mechanical quirks, we'll break those down when they become relevant. Similarly, if you're not caught up on Jujutsu Kaisen or aren't familiar with the specifics of how Gojo's techniques work, we'll provide all the context you need to follow along. The scope of tonight's analysis is truly comprehensive. We're talking about a character build that would be viable from the very beginning of the game all the way through New Game Plus cycles and beyond. We'll discuss early game strategies for a Gojo character who hasn't yet fully mastered his abilities, mid-game power spikes as key techniques become available, and end-game optimization for someone who has fully realized their potential. We'll also be considering the co-op implications. How would having a Gojo character in your party change the dynamic of boss fights? What new strategies become available when you have someone who can manipulate space and time? How would classic Dark Souls 2 encounters be trivialized? And which ones might still present genuine challenges even to someone of Gojo's caliber? This analysis represents hundreds of hours of research, calculation, and theoretical testing. We've run the numbers on stat distributions, damage calculations, and resource costs. We've mapped out progression paths and considered multiple build variants. We've even thought about how the character creation system would need to be modified to accommodate some of Gojo's unique visual characteristics. After all, those distinctive eyes are pretty important to the character. So settle in, get comfortable, and prepare for what might be our most ambitious character analysis yet. Whether you're here for the detailed mechanical breakdowns, the lore integration, or just want to imagine what it would be like to play as one of anime's most iconic characters in one of gaming's most beloved series, we've got something for everyone. Over the next several hours, we're going to completely reimagine Gojo Satoru through the lens of Dark Souls 2's mechanical systems. We'll be covering his stats, abilities, equipment, strategies, and so much more. By the end, you'll have a complete understanding of how the strongest sorcerer in the Jujutsu Kaisen universe would function in the cursed land of Drangliak. Let's begin our journey into the intersection of cursed techniques and cursed lands, where the 6 eyes meet the 4 schools of magic, and where infinity encounters the infinite cycle of death and rebirth that defines the Dark Souls experience. To properly translate Gojo Satoru into the Dark Souls 2 universe, we first need to understand exactly who he is, what makes him unique, and how his abilities and personality would fit into the broader lore of Drangliak. This isn't just about mechanical translation. It's about creating a character that feels authentic to both source materials while opening up new possibilities for storytelling and gameplay. Gojo Satoru is, without question, one of the most powerful characters in modern anime and manga. Born into the prestigious Gojo clan, one of the 3 great families of Jujutsu sorcerers, he inherited not one but 2 incredibly rare techniques, the 6 eyes and the limitless technique. The combination of these 2 abilities makes him not just powerful, but effectively unbeatable by conventional means. In his own universe, he's often described as a walking strategic weapon, someone whose very existence shifts the balance of power in the supernatural world. But power isn't the only thing that defines Gojo. His personality is equally important to understanding how he would function in Dark Souls 2. He's confident to the point of arrogance, playful and often childish in his interactions, but also capable of incredible ruthlessness when the situation demands it. He's a teacher who genuinely cares about his students and wants to reform the corrupt Jujutsu society, but he's also someone who operates largely outside traditional authority structures because his power makes him effectively untouchable. The question becomes, how does someone with this background and personality fit into the world of Dark Souls 2? The answer lies in understanding what Dark Souls 2 is really about at its core. Beneath all the mechanical complexity and challenging gameplay, Dark Souls 2 is a story about cycles, about the weight of responsibility, and about what it means to be human in the face of overwhelming despair and futility. In our reimagining, Gojo's arrival in Drangliak isn't random. Like all undead who find themselves in this cursed land, he's drawn by the promise of breaking free from an endless cycle. Though in his case, it's not the cycle of death and rebirth that affects most undead, but rather the cycle of conflict between cursed spirits and Jujutsu sorcerers that has defined his entire existence. The curse of the undead has affected him differently than others, interacting with his existing cursed techniques in unexpected ways. The six eyes, which normally allow him to see cursed energy with perfect clarity, have adapted to perceive souls themselves. In the world of Dark Souls 2, where souls are the fundamental currency of power and the source of all magical ability, this gives Gojo an unprecedented advantage. He can see the soul strength of enemies from vast distances, identify the exact nature of magical attacks before they're even cast, and track the flow of soul energy through the environment with perfect precision. His limitless technique, which manipulates space at the atomic level, has also evolved. The fundamental forces that govern reality in Drangleic operate slightly differently than in his home universe, and his technique has adapted accordingly. Instead of just manipulating space, he can now manipulate the fabric of reality itself, including the mysterious force that governs how souls interact with matter. This evolution is what allows his techniques to scale appropriately with the incredible power levels present in Dark Souls 2's universe. From a lore perspective, Gojo's presence in Drangleic would be significant enough to be recorded in the game's environmental storytelling. Ancient texts would speak of a strange sorcerer who arrived during the height of the kingdom's power, one whose eyes could peer into the very essence of souls, and whose techniques defied all known schools of magic. Some scholars would theorize that he was an early experiment by Aldea in transcending human limitations, while others would suggest he was a visitor from a parallel world where the nature of magic developed along entirely different lines. The way Gojo would interact with key Dark Souls 2 characters is particularly fascinating to consider. His relationship with Emerald Herald would be complex. Her artificial nature and connection to the ancient dragon would be immediately apparent to his six eyes, but rather than being disturbed by this revelation, he would likely find it intellectually fascinating. His conversations with her would take on an entirely different tone, as he would be one of the few people capable of truly understanding what she is and the burden she carries. With Vendrick, Gojo would see immediately through the king's human facade to the hollow shell beneath. This knowledge would color all of their potential interactions, creating a dynamic where Gojo must decide whether to show mercy to a fallen ruler or to put an end to his suffering. Given Gojo's complex relationship with authority and his tendency to make decisions based on his own moral code rather than societal expectations, this interaction could go in several interesting directions. Aldea represents perhaps the most intriguing potential relationship. Both characters are concerned with transcending human limitations and reforming corrupt systems, but their methods are drastically different. Aldea's experiments and pursuit of knowledge at any cost would likely disgust Gojo, who despite his own moral flexibility has clear lines he won't cross when it comes to protecting others. Yet Gojo would also recognize Aldea as perhaps the only other being in Drangleic operating on a similar intellectual level, creating a complex dynamic of mutual respect and fundamental disagreement. The undead curse itself would affect Gojo in unique ways. His incredible power means that going hollow would be a much slower process for him than for ordinary undead, but it would still be a constant threat. The curse would manifest not as a loss of memory or purpose, but as a gradual disconnection from his emotions and empathy, the very qualities that make him want to protect others and reform society. This creates a ticking clock element where Gojo must accomplish his goals in Drangleic before he loses the humanity that drives his heroic impulses. His teaching background becomes relevant in unexpected ways in Drangleic. Throughout his journey, he would encounter other undead struggling with their cursed existence, and his natural inclination would be to help them develop their own abilities and overcome their limitations. This could manifest as unique NPC questlines where Gojo helps other characters unlock new abilities or overcome specific challenges, essentially serving as a mentor figure within the larger narrative. The political implications of Gojo's presence would ripple throughout Drangleic's power structures. His overwhelming strength and independence would make him a wild card that no faction could truly control. The various Covenant leaders would all want to recruit him, but his tendency to operate according to his own moral code rather than institutional loyalty would make him an unreliable ally at best. This creates interesting storyline possibilities where different factions compete for his attention while he pursues his own agenda. From a philosophical standpoint, Gojo's presence in Dark Souls 2 raises questions about the nature of strength and responsibility. In his home universe, his power makes him uniquely capable of protecting others, but it also isolates him from normal human experience. In Drangleic, where power is more broadly distributed, and even incredible strength can be overcome through cunning or persistence, he would be forced to confront different aspects of what it means to be responsible for others' well-being. The environmental storytelling of Dark Souls 2 would be enriched by evidence of Gojo's passage. Certain areas might show signs of spatial distortion where he tested his techniques, while others might contain items or inscriptions that reference his unique abilities. The game's signature ambiguous narrative style would be maintained, with players having to piece together Gojo's story through item descriptions, environmental clues, and brief NPC interactions. His presence would also provide new perspective on some of Dark Souls 2's central themes. The game frequently explores the question of whether it's better to accept an imperfect system or to risk everything in an attempt at change. Gojo's character arc has always been about choosing to fight for change despite the personal cost, and his journey through Drangleic would be a continuation of that theme on a larger scale. The integration of Gojo into Dark Souls 2's lore isn't just about adding a powerful character to an existing world. It's about exploring how that character would be changed by the experience while simultaneously changing the world around him. By the end of his journey through Drangleic, Gojo would be fundamentally different than when he started, having gained new understanding about the nature of power, responsibility, and what it truly means to protect others. This character integration serves as the foundation for everything else we'll discuss. His stats, abilities, and equipment all flow from this fundamental understanding of who Gojo is and how he fits into the Dark Souls 2 universe. With this foundation established, we can now begin examining the mechanical systems that would bring this vision to life. Creating a proper Gojo Satoru build in Dark Souls 2 requires careful consideration of the game's fundamental stat system and how each attribute would reflect his canonical abilities and characteristics. This isn't simply about creating an overpowered character. It's about designing a build that captures the essence of Gojo while remaining mechanically interesting and strategically deep within Dark Souls 2's framework. The first consideration is starting class. While it might seem obvious to choose Sorcerer as the starting class for a character focused on magical abilities, Gojo's nature is more complex than pure spellcasting would suggest. His physical capabilities are also superhuman, enhanced by cursed energy reinforcement techniques that make him formidable in close combat as well as at range. After extensive analysis, the optimal starting class would actually be the Knight, specifically modified to represent Gojo's unique background. The Knight class provides a balanced foundation with decent physical stats while still allowing for significant investment in magical attributes. More importantly, it represents someone trained in combat from an early age, which aligns with Gojo's background as someone raised within the Jujutsu Society and trained in various fighting disciplines. The starting equipment would be completely replaced, but the stat distribution provides the most efficient foundation for the complex hybrid build that Gojo represents. Let's break down the 8 core attributes and how they apply to our Gojo build. Vigor represents the character's overall vitality and health pool. For Gojo, this needs to be substantial but not excessive. His canonical durability comes more from his infinity technique preventing attacks from reaching him rather than from pure physical resilience. However, as a Dark Souls 2 character, he needs enough health to survive the occasional hit that gets through his defenses. The target for Vigor would be 40 to 45 points, providing a large health pool without overinvestment in an attribute that doesn't directly enhance his signature abilities. Endurance governs stamina and equipment load capacity. This is crucial for Gojo's fighting style, which involves frequent teleportation, close combat engagement, and rapid casting of multiple techniques in succession. His enhanced physical conditioning from cursed energy reinforcement translates to exceptional stamina in Dark Souls 2 terms. Endurance should be a major investment, targeting 40 to 50 points to ensure he can maintain his aggressive, mobile combat style without stamina management becoming a limiting factor. Vitality controls equipment load and poison resistance. While Gojo doesn't rely heavily on armor, his technique usage requires freedom of movement that would be restricted by heavy equipment. Additionally, his 6 eyes provide enhanced awareness that would translate to improved resistance against various status effects. A moderate investment of 20 to 25 points provides sufficient equipment load for his chosen gear while boosting his resistance stats. Attunement is perhaps the most critical stat for our Gojo build. This governs spell slots, casting speed, and most importantly, agility, which controls the invincibility frames during rolling and the speed of various animations. Gojo's enhanced reflexes and perception would translate to exceptional agility, while his diverse array of techniques requires numerous spell slots. This should be the primary stat investment, targeting 60+ points to maximize both spell variety and defensive capabilities. Strength and dexterity represent physical combat capabilities. Gojo's martial arts training and cursed energy enhancement make him formidable in close combat, but he's not primarily a physical fighter. A balanced approach works best, with enough investment in both stats, targeting 20 to 25 each, to wield a variety of weapons effectively while not over-investing in attributes that don't enhance his signature techniques. Intelligence governs sorceries and certain weapon scaling. Many of Gojo's techniques, particularly his spatial manipulation abilities, would be classified as sorceries in Dark Souls 2 terms. This requires significant investment, targeting 50 to 60 points to maximize the power of his most iconic abilities. High intelligence also provides additional spell slots through certain equipment, supporting his diverse technique arsenal. Faith controls miracles and lightning-based attacks. While not as central to Gojo's abilities as intelligence, several of his techniques could be classified as miracles, particularly those related to his enhanced perception and protective abilities. A moderate investment of 30 to 40 points provides access to important support spells while boosting lightning damage for certain weapon applications. The synergy between these stats creates a character that's formidable in multiple areas without being completely overpowered in any single aspect. The high attunement provides the agility needed for his defensive techniques, while the balanced physical stats ensure he can engage effectively at close range when needed. The substantial magical investments give him access to a wide variety of techniques, while providing the raw power needed to make those techniques effective against Dark Souls 2's challenging enemies. Soul level optimization for this build is particularly interesting. The diverse stat requirements mean that effective versions of the character can exist at multiple level ranges. An early game Gojo, SL 100 to 120, would focus on core attunement and intelligence, with basic competency in physical stats. A mid-game build, SL 150 to 180, would add substantial vigor and endurance while pushing magical stats toward their caps. An endgame build, SL 200+, would achieve near-optimal distribution across all relevant attributes. The progression path requires careful planning to maintain effectiveness throughout the game. Early levels should prioritize attunement to 30 for essential agility and spell slots, followed by intelligence to 40 for spell power. Vigor investment comes next for survivability, then endurance for stamina management. The final stages involve pushing magical stats to their soft caps while achieving minimum requirements for important equipment. Ring choices significantly impact the build's effectiveness. The 4 ring slots become crucial for optimizing the character's diverse capabilities. Essential rings include the Southern Ritual Band +2 for additional spell slots, the Clear Bluestone Ring +2 for casting speed, and the Third Dragon Ring for balanced stat boosts. The 4th slot varies based on situation and playstyle preference. Equipment load management requires special consideration. Gojo's techniques benefit from fast roll speeds, but he also needs access to various weapons and sufficient spell slots. The optimal setup uses light armor with high magical resistances rather than heavy physical protection, reflecting his reliance on technique rather than equipment for defense. Covenant selection impacts character development significantly. The Pilgrims of Dark Covenant provides access to unique hexes that could represent some of Gojo's more destructive techniques, while the Blue Sentinels offers protective magic that aligns with his role as someone who protects others. The Dragon Remnant's Covenant could represent his status as someone who operates outside normal authority structures. Scaling considerations affect weapon and spell choices throughout the character's development. Early game focuses on weapons with low stat requirements, but good scaling potential. Mid-game introduces specialized weapons that complement his magical abilities. In-game optimization involves weapons that scale with multiple stats, maximizing the benefit from his diverse attribute investment. The build's flexibility allows for multiple playstyle approaches within the same character framework. Players can emphasize different aspects of Gojo's abilities based on personal preference while maintaining the core identity. Some might focus more heavily on his spatial manipulation techniques, others on his martial arts capabilities, and still others on his role as a mentor and protector of other players. Resource management becomes a key strategic element. Unlike characters focused on a single damage type or approach, Gojo must balance multiple resource pools: health, stamina, spell uses, and various consumables. This creates interesting tactical decisions about when to use which abilities and how to maintain effectiveness throughout extended encounters. PvP considerations influence stat distribution choices. The build needs sufficient survivability to withstand focused attacks, while maintaining the versatility to adapt to different opponent strategies. The high agility from attunement investment provides exceptional defensive capabilities, while the diverse spell arsenal offers answers to most common PvP scenarios. Co-op optimization affects equipment and spell selection. When playing with others, Gojo's support capabilities become more prominent, requiring different spell loadouts and tactical approaches than solo play. The build's natural versatility makes it excellent for cooperative play, able to fulfill multiple roles as needed. This foundational framework provides the mechanical basis for everything else we'll explore about Gojo as a Dark Souls 2 character. The stat distribution captures his diverse capabilities while maintaining strategic depth and interesting tactical decisions. With this foundation established, we can examine how his specific abilities translate into Dark Souls 2's mechanical systems. The Six Eyes represent one of Gojo Satoru's most fundamental and powerful abilities, and translating them into Dark Souls 2's mechanical framework requires careful consideration of how enhanced perception and analytical capabilities would function within the game's systems. These aren't just cosmetic changes or simple stat bonuses. They represent a fundamental alteration to how the player experiences and interacts with the game world. In canonical Jujutsu Kaisen, the Six Eyes provide Gojo with several incredible abilities: perfect perception of cursed energy down to atomic levels, enhanced visual acuity that borders on precognition, incredibly efficient use of cursed energy that makes him effectively inexhaustible, and the ability to process vast amounts of information instantaneously. Translating these abilities into Dark Souls 2 terms creates a unique passive ability system that affects nearly every aspect of gameplay. The most immediate and noticeable effect of the Six Eyes in Dark Souls 2 would be enhanced visual information. Players with this ability would see additional interface elements and environmental details that normal characters cannot perceive. Enemy health bars would be visible at much greater distances, along with indicators showing their current stamina, spell uses remaining, and any active buffs or debuffs. This doesn't break the game's traditional interface design. Rather, it represents the character's supernatural ability to perceive the spiritual energy that underlies all of these mechanical systems. Soul Sight represents another crucial aspect of the Six Eyes adaptation. In Dark Souls 2, souls are the fundamental currency of power, and the ability to see them directly would provide enormous strategic advantages. Players would be able to see the exact soul value of enemies before defeating them, identify which enemies in a group carry the most souls, and even track the path of souls as they're absorbed after enemy death. This creates interesting tactical decisions about target prioritization and resource collection. The analytical capabilities of the Six Eyes translate into a unique targeting and information system. When focusing on any enemy or object, detailed information becomes available: exact damage resistances, weaknesses to specific damage types, current status effects, and even predictive information about upcoming attacks based on the enemy's current state and behavior patterns. This isn't simply a mechanical advantage. It represents Gojo's supernatural ability to analyze and understand everything he observes. Environmental perception enhancement affects exploration and navigation in subtle but significant ways. Hidden items become highlighted when the player's vision passes near them, representing the six eyes' ability to perceive the residual spiritual energy that clings to significant objects. Illusory walls and hidden passages are immediately apparent, as the six eyes can perceive the discontinuity in spiritual energy that such concealment creates. This doesn't remove the exploration aspect of Dark Souls 2, but rather shifts it toward understanding the significance of what's discovered rather than simply finding it. The resource management benefits of the six eyes manifest as enhanced efficiency across all character systems. Stamina regeneration receives a significant boost, representing Gojo's enhanced physical conditioning and efficient energy usage. More importantly, spell uses regenerate slowly over time rather than requiring rest at bonfires, reflecting the six eyes' ability to optimize cursed energy expenditure. This regeneration is slow enough to maintain tactical significance, perhaps one spell use per minute of active gameplay, but provides enough sustain to make extended exploration and combat encounters more feasible. Combat prediction represents one of the most sophisticated aspects of the six eyes translation. The enhanced perception allows for limited prediction of enemy actions, manifested as subtle visual cues that indicate which attack an enemy is about to perform. This isn't precognition in the literal sense, but rather represents the character's ability to read micro-expressions, muscle tension, and energy patterns that precede specific actions. Experienced players could learn to interpret these cues for significant tactical advantage. The six eyes also provide enhanced resistance to various forms of deception and misdirection. Illusion-type spells and techniques are immediately seen through, as the eyes perceive the reality beneath the false appearance. This includes player-created illusions in PvP situations, making the six eyes user particularly difficult to deceive or ambush. Similarly, transformed or shape-shifted enemies are immediately identified for what they truly are. Boss encounter modifications represent some of the most interesting applications of six eyes functionality. Against major bosses, the enhanced perception provides additional tactical information and environmental awareness. Phase transitions become predictable as the player can observe the boss's spiritual energy building toward critical thresholds. Environmental hazards and interactive elements are immediately apparent, allowing for more strategic approaches to traditionally straightforward encounters. The soul resonance detection ability allows six eyes users to identify other powerful beings from great distances. This manifests as a form of enhanced radar for significant threats and opportunities. Approaching boss encounters, hidden NPCs, or other players with particularly high soul levels all trigger distinctive visual and audio cues. This creates interesting strategic decisions about when to engage or avoid potentially dangerous encounters. Cooperative play receives unique benefits from six eyes perception. When playing with other players, the enhanced vision allows for superior tactical coordination. Players can see their allies' resource states, health, stamina, spell uses, even when separated, allowing for better timing of support actions and strategic positioning. The ability to analyze enemy weaknesses and resistances becomes a powerful tool for coordinating group tactics. PvP applications of the six eyes create fascinating dynamics in player versus player combat. The information advantage is significant but not overwhelming, as skilled opponents can still succeed through superior tactics, positioning, or simple mechanical execution. However, the ability to read opponents' resource states and predict their actions creates a psychological element where opponents know they're fighting someone who can see through their strategies. The limitation system for six eyes ensures that the ability remains powerful without becoming game-breaking. Extended use of the enhanced perception causes eye strain, represented mechanically as gradually increasing stamina costs for maintaining the heightened awareness. This creates natural breakpoints where players must choose between maintaining their informational advantage and preserving their stamina for combat actions. Integration with other abilities creates synergistic effects that enhance the overall character power without making any individual aspect overwhelming. The six eyes provide the information needed to optimize the use of other techniques, while those techniques provide the tools to act on the information the eyes provide. This creates a unified character system where each ability enhances and is enhanced by the others. The visual representation of six eyes activation would be distinctive without being distracting. When the ability is active, The character's eyes would glow with a subtle blue light, and the player's visual field would gain various informational overlays. The effect is designed to feel powerful and mystical while maintaining Dark Souls 2's overall aesthetic and interface design principles. Environmental storytelling opportunities arise from the Six Eyes' unique perception capabilities. Certain areas and objects would reveal additional lore and information when viewed through enhanced sight, providing deeper insight into Drangliak's history and the nature of the curse. This creates additional content for players who choose this character build while maintaining the optional nature of Dark Souls storytelling. The progression system for Six Eyes' abilities allows for growth and development throughout the character's journey. Early versions of the ability provide basic enhanced perception, while advanced stages unlock more sophisticated analytical capabilities and predictive functions. This creates a sense of character growth that goes beyond simple stat increases. These Six Eyes mechanics form the foundation for how a Gojo character would interact with Dark Souls 2's world, providing the enhanced perception and analytical capabilities that make his other techniques possible, while creating interesting tactical and strategic decisions for players who choose to embody this incredible power. The Limitless technique represents the core of Gojo Satoru's offensive and defensive capabilities, and translating its reality-bending spatial manipulation into Dark Souls 2's mechanical framework presents some of the most interesting and complex design challenges of our entire analysis. This technique essentially allows Gojo to manipulate space at the fundamental level, creating barriers, compressing distances, expanding areas, and controlling the very fabric of reality around him. The infinity aspect of the Limitless technique would function as a revolutionary defensive mechanic in Dark Souls 2. Rather than traditional damage reduction or blocking, Infinity creates a probability-based defense system where attacks have increasingly lower chances of connecting as they approach Gojo. This isn't invincibility in the traditional sense. It's a mathematical representation of how the technique slows attacking objects asymptotically as they near his body, theoretically never quite reaching him. Mechanically, this translates to a layered defense system activated as a toggle ability. When Infinity is active, incoming attacks must pass through multiple proximity checks, with each layer having a percentage chance to completely negate the attack. The closest layer might have a 30% negation chance, the middle layer 50%, and the innermost layer 70%. This means that while no single attack is guaranteed to be blocked, the vast majority will be, especially when multiple attacks come simultaneously. The system creates the feeling of near invulnerability while maintaining the possibility of damage that keeps combat interesting. The resource cost for maintaining Infinity draws from a unique meter that functions similarly to stamina but regenerates much more slowly. This represents the concentration and cursed energy required to maintain such precise spatial manipulation. The meter drains continuously while active, with the drain rate increasing when the technique actively blocks attacks. This creates tactical decisions about when to activate the defense and when to conserve resources for other techniques. Blue technique applications represent the attractive force aspect of the Limitless technique. These abilities allow Gojo to pull enemies toward him, compress space to bring distant targets into melee range, or create localized gravitational effects that draw in projectiles and redirect them. In Dark Souls 2 terms, this manifests as a school of unique sorceries that manipulate positioning rather than dealing direct damage. The basic blue technique would be a targeted pull effect that draws a single enemy rapidly toward Gojo's position. This serves multiple tactical purposes, bringing ranged enemies into melee range, interrupting enemy attacks by forcibly moving them, and creating opportunities for follow-up attacks. The technique has moderate soul cost and a brief casting time, making it useful for tactical positioning but requiring good timing to use effectively. Advanced blue techniques include area of effect pulls that affect multiple enemies simultaneously, creating opportunities for crowd control in challenging encounters. The most powerful variant creates a sustained gravitational field that continuously draws enemies inward while damaging them, essentially functioning as a magical trap that grows more dangerous the longer enemies remain within its effect radius. Red technique applications represent the repulsive force aspect of spatial manipulation. These abilities push enemies away, create explosive bursts of kinetic energy and generate powerful projectile attacks through space compression and sudden expansion. The red techniques function as the primary offensive applications of the limitless ability set. The fundamental red technique creates a targeted explosion of repulsive force at a designated location. Unlike traditional explosion spells, this attack has perfect accuracy and cannot be dodged once initiated, representing the instantaneous nature of spatial manipulation. The damage scales with intelligence and technique mastery, while the area of effect can be modified through advanced casting techniques. Reversal Red represents the most powerful single-target attack in Gojo's arsenal. This technique combines attractive and repulsive forces to create a devastating projectile that tracks its target and explodes on contact. The casting time is substantial, making it primarily useful against large, slow-moving enemies or in situations where the target cannot easily dodge. The soul cost is correspondingly high, limiting its use to critical moments. Hollow Purple represents the ultimate expression of the limitless technique, combining red and blue into a technique that doesn't just manipulate space, but actually erases it. This manifests as the most powerful spell in Gojo's arsenal, dealing percentage-based damage that can threaten even the strongest bosses. The technique requires extensive preparation, consuming significant resources from multiple pools, and has a long cooldown period between uses. The spatial manipulation aspects extend beyond simple offensive and defensive applications. Gojo gains access to unique movement techniques that allow for limited teleportation and dimensional stepping. These abilities function as enhanced versions of traditional movement spells, providing both tactical positioning advantages and escape options when situations become untenable. Short-range teleportation allows for rapid repositioning within combat encounters. The technique has minimal resource cost but brief cooldown periods between uses, preventing it from trivializing encounter design while providing significant tactical flexibility. The teleportation range increases with technique mastery and can be modified by equipment and ring choices. Long-range teleportation functions as an enhanced version of traditional homeward magic, but with the ability to target any previously visited bonfire rather than just the most recently rested location. This represents Gojo's ability to manipulate space on larger scales, effectively allowing for fast travel without using traditional game mechanics. Environmental manipulation represents another application of spatial techniques. Gojo can interact with the game world in unique ways, such as creating temporary platforms in areas with environmental hazards, manipulating the effective size of narrow passages, or even creating shortcuts through careful spatial folding. These abilities are primarily utility-focused but can provide significant advantages in navigation and exploration. The infinity barrier can be selectively permeable, allowing Gojo to choose what passes through and what doesn't. This creates interesting tactical applications where beneficial spells from allies can reach him while hostile magic is blocked, or where he can attack through the barrier while remaining protected from retaliation. The selective permeability requires active management and additional resource expenditure. Technique combinations create synergistic effects that are more powerful than the sum of their parts. Using blue to position enemies followed immediately by red for maximum damage, or combining multiple red techniques for overwhelming area denial. These combinations require precise timing and significant resource investment, but can turn the tide of challenging encounters. Boss encounter strategies are fundamentally altered by the availability of spatial manipulation. Traditional positioning-based boss mechanics become much more manageable when space itself can be manipulated. However, the resource-intensive nature of these techniques means that players must still engage with the encounter's core mechanics rather than simply overwhelming them with raw power. PvP applications of spatial manipulation create unique dynamics in player versus player combat. The ability to manipulate positioning and create unpredictable attack angles forces opponents to adapt their strategies significantly. However, the resource costs and timing requirements ensure that skilled opponents can still find openings and counter strategies. The learning curve for mastering spatial manipulation is intentionally steep, reflecting the complexity of Gojo's techniques in the source material. Early access provides basic functionality, but truly effective use requires understanding the interplay between different techniques, resource management, and timing. This creates a skill ceiling that rewards dedicated practice and experimentation. Equipment interactions affect spatial manipulation effectiveness in various ways. Certain weapons gain enhanced properties when wielded by someone capable of spatial manipulation, while specific armor sets or accessories can reduce the resource costs or improve the precision of technique usage. This creates equipment choices that go beyond simple stat optimization. Environmental effects can either enhance or inhibit spatial manipulation depending on the area's properties. Locations with strong magical fields might boost technique effectiveness, while areas affected by spatial distortions might interfere with precise control. This creates location-based tactical considerations that add depth to encounter design. The progression system for spatial manipulation allows for gradual mastery of increasingly powerful techniques. Early stages focus on basic blue and red applications, while advanced mastery unlocks combination techniques, environmental manipulation, and ultimately the ability to use hollow purple. This progression provides clear goals for character development while maintaining mechanical complexity. These spatial manipulation mechanics represent the most technically complex aspect of our Gojo translation, requiring careful balance between faithful adaptation of his canonical abilities and maintaining Dark Souls 2's challenging, tactical combat system. Domain expansion represents the absolute pinnacle of Jujutsu sorcery, and Gojo's Unlimited Void is arguably the most powerful domain in the entire Jujutsu Kaisen universe. Translating this reality-altering technique into Dark Souls 2's mechanical framework requires creating a system that captures both the overwhelming power and the strategic complexity of deploying such an ultimate ability. In canonical terms, Unlimited Void traps opponents within an infinite space where they experience all sensations and information simultaneously, effectively paralyzing them through sensory overload. For Dark Souls 2, this translates into the game's most powerful area of effect: crowd control and damage ability, functioning as both an ultimate attack and a fundamental alteration to the battlefield itself. The activation process for domain expansion requires extensive preparation and resource commitment. Unlike regular spells that can be cast with a simple button press, domain expansion requires a complex input sequence that takes several seconds to complete, during which Gojo is vulnerable to interruption. This preparation phase is crucial for maintaining game balance. The technique's power is enormous, but the setup time and resource cost create meaningful strategic decisions about when and how to deploy it. The resource requirements are substantial and multi-layered. Domain expansion consumes all remaining spell uses from every school of magic simultaneously, representing the technique's nature as a fusion of all magical disciplines. Additionally, it requires a significant portion of the character's total soul count, souls that are permanently consumed rather than simply spent, representing the life force required to alter reality itself. Finally, successful deployment inflicts a temporary curse on Gojo that reduces his maximum health and stamina for a substantial period following the technique's use. The physical manifestation of Unlimited Void creates a distinctive environmental effect that fundamentally alters the battlefield. When activated, the area within a large radius around Gojo transforms into an ethereal, void-like space filled with swirling galaxies and infinite depth. This isn't merely cosmetic. The domain alteration affects movement, visibility, and spatial relationships within the affected area. Within the domain, all enemies except Gojo experience severe debilitating effects that represent the sensory overload of experiencing infinite information. Movement speed is reduced to a crawl, attack animations become extremely slow, and spell casting becomes nearly impossible as the affected beings struggle to process the overwhelming sensory input. These effects scale based on enemy intelligence and awareness. Mindless undead are less affected than intelligent casters or other players. The damage component of Unlimited Void functions as continuous percentage-based damage over time rather than a single massive hit. This represents the gradual breakdown of consciousness and physical form that occurs when exposed to infinite information. The damage bypasses traditional resistances and defenses, as it's attacking the fundamental structure of existence rather than dealing conventional elemental or physical damage. Boss encounters are fundamentally altered when domain expansion becomes available. Most standard enemies are completely incapacitated by the technique, but major bosses possess sufficient mental fortitude to resist the complete paralysis effect. However, they still suffer significant debuffs and continuous damage, creating windows of opportunity for follow-up attacks that wouldn't normally exist. The most important bosses have unique interactions with domain expansion that reflect their nature and power level. Ancient beings like the ancient dragon or Vindric might possess sufficient mental discipline to partially resist the technique's effects, while others like the ruined sentinels might be completely overwhelmed due to their artificial nature and limited consciousness. PvP applications of domain expansion create some of the most intense and strategic moments possible in Dark Souls 2 combat. The technique's long setup time makes it extremely risky to attempt against skilled opponents, but successful deployment can end fights instantly. This creates fascinating mind games where opponents must balance aggressive pressure to prevent domain deployment against defensive positioning to survive if the technique does activate. Counter-strategies for domain expansion become crucial elements of high-level PvP. Certain builds and techniques can interrupt the setup process, while others focus on surviving the effect duration through enhanced resistances or mobility options. The most sophisticated counter-strategy involves predicting domain deployment and using the setup time to create maximum distance, potentially escaping the effect radius entirely. The duration of Unlimited Void is deliberately limited to prevent it from completely trivializing encounter design. The base duration is approximately 30 seconds of game time, which is sufficient to dramatically alter most combat situations, but not long enough to solve entire encounters single-handedly. This duration can be extended through specific equipment choices and character optimization, but never beyond the point where it becomes a simple win button. Environmental factors can influence domain expansion effectiveness in various ways. Certain locations with strong magical fields or spatial distortions might enhance the technique's power or extend its duration. Conversely, areas protected by ancient wards or divine blessing might provide partial resistance to domain effects. This creates location-specific tactical considerations for when and where to deploy the technique. The cooldown period following domain expansion is extensive, preventing repeated use and ensuring that each deployment represents a significant strategic decision. The base cooldown is measured in hours of real-time rather than minutes, meaning that players typically have access to the technique only once per play session. This reinforces its nature as an ultimate ability reserved for the most critical moments. Cooperative play interactions with domain expansion create unique team dynamics. Allied players within the domain are unaffected by its negative effects and can move and act normally, while enemies are incapacitated. This creates opportunities for coordinated attacks and strategies that simply aren't possible under normal circumstances. However, the technique's resource cost means that coordination and timing become crucial for maximizing its impact. The learning curve for effective domain expansion usage is extremely steep, requiring deep understanding of encounter design, enemy behavior patterns, and resource management. New players might waste the technique on situations where simpler solutions would suffice, while experienced players learn to recognize the rare moments where domain deployment is truly optimal. Equipment synergies can enhance various aspects of domain expansion without making the technique overpowered. Certain rings might reduce the setup time slightly, while others could extend the duration or reduce the cooldown period. Specific weapon or armor combinations might provide protection against interruption during the setup phase. These enhancements create meaningful equipment choices for players who want to optimize their domain usage. The visual and audio design of Unlimited Void would be among the most spectacular effects in Dark Souls 2. The transformation of the environment into infinite void filled with stars and galaxies, combined with ethereal sound design that emphasizes the overwhelming nature of infinite sensation, creates an experience that feels truly otherworldly and befitting such an ultimate technique. Lore integration explains domain expansion as a technique that temporarily overwrites local reality with the user's inner world. In Dark Souls 2's universe, this connects to themes of will, determination, and the power of consciousness to shape reality. Ancient texts would describe legendary sorcerers capable of similar feats, placing Gojo's abilities within the broader context of Drangliak's magical tradition. Story implications of possessing domain expansion affect how NPCs and the world react to Gojo's presence. Characters knowledgeable about magic would recognize the signs of someone capable of such reality-altering techniques, leading to unique dialogue and quest opportunities. The technique's mere existence would mark Gojo as a figure of immense importance within Drangliak's magical community. The psychological impact on enemies and other players creates an additional strategic layer. Even when domain expansion isn't active, opponents must consider its potential deployment, affecting their tactical decisions and risk assessment. These domain expansion mechanics represent the ultimate expression of Gojo's power within Dark Souls 2's framework, providing an ability that truly feels like the reality-altering technique it represents while maintaining the strategic depth and balanced gameplay that define the Souls experience. Gojo Satoru's approach to combat extends far beyond his supernatural techniques, encompassing a sophisticated understanding of martial arts, tactical positioning, and the strategic use of various weapons enhanced by his cursed energy manipulation. Translating this combat versatility into Dark Souls 2's weapon system creates opportunities for unique move sets, enhanced weapon properties, and combat styles that blend traditional swordsmanship with reality-bending techniques. The foundational weapon for our Gojo build would be a unique katana-class weapon that represents his preference for elegant, precise combat. This isn't simply a reskinned existing weapon. It would have distinctive properties that reflect his ability to enhance weapons with cursed energy manipulation. The blade itself would be longer and thinner than traditional Dark Souls 2 katanas, with a subtle blue-white glow along its edge that intensifies during special attacks. The weapon's basic move set combines traditional katana techniques with spatial manipulation enhancements. Standard light attacks feature rapid, precise strikes with extended reach due to spatial compression effects. The weapon appears to cut through air itself, with slight visual distortions along the blade's path that indicate reality being severed at the molecular level. Heavy attacks incorporate brief spatial shifts that allow attacks to bypass shields and armor, representing cursed energy cutting through matter rather than simply striking it. Special abilities unique to Gojo's enhanced weapons include the capacity to channel his various techniques through weapon strikes. Red technique integration allows heavy attacks to create small explosive bursts of repulsive force on impact, dealing area damage and potentially staggering multiple enemies. Blue technique enhancement enables certain attacks to pull enemies into striking range automatically, creating combo opportunities that wouldn't normally be possible. The weapon's scaling properties reflect Gojo's diverse capabilities, gaining damage bonuses from multiple stats rather than focusing on a single attribute. Intelligence provides the primary scaling for the spatial enhancement effects, while dexterity affects attack speed and critical hit rate. Faith contributes to the weapon's unique ability to harm enemies that resist physical damage, and attunement influences the efficiency of technique channeling through weapon attacks. Dual-wielding capabilities open up additional combat options that showcase Gojo's ambidextrous fighting style. When wielding two enhanced weapons simultaneously, new moveset options become available that incorporate coordinated spatial manipulation. Certain attack combinations can create temporary spatial rifts that function as short-range teleportation attacks, allowing Gojo to strike from unexpected angles or bypass enemy defenses entirely. Hand-to-hand combat represents another crucial aspect of Gojo's arsenal, requiring the creation of unique unarmed combat mechanics within Dark Souls 2's framework. Enhanced martial arts movesets would be available when fighting without weapons, featuring rapid combination attacks enhanced by cursed energy manipulation. These unarmed attacks gain scaling from both physical stats and magical investment, representing the fusion of martial technique with supernatural enhancement. The unarmed moveset includes special grappling techniques that incorporate spatial manipulation. Certain grab attacks can teleport both Gojo and his target to different positions, creating tactical positioning advantages or removing enemies from advantageous positions. More advanced techniques allow for combination grapples that set up devastating technique usage, such as grabbing an enemy and immediately deploying a point-blank red technique. Projectile weapons gain unique enhancements when used by someone capable of spatial manipulation. Traditional ranged weapons like bows or crossbows can have their projectiles enhanced with minor spatial effects, causing arrows to curve around obstacles or ignore distance limitations within reasonable ranges. This doesn't make ranged weapons overpowered, but provides tactical options that reflect Gojo's ability to enhance any tool with his techniques. The creation of cursed energy projectiles represents a unique ranged attack option that doesn't require traditional ammunition. These attacks function as spell-like abilities, but use weapon-based animations and timing, creating a hybrid between magic and martial combat. The projectiles can be charged for increased power, aimed with precision that exceeds normal targeting systems, and modified with various technique enhancements. Combination attacks that blend weapon strikes with technique usage create the most sophisticated combat options available to the Gojo build. These combinations require precise timing and significant resource management, but provide devastating effectiveness when executed properly. Examples include weapon strikes enhanced with blue techniques to pull enemies into follow-up attacks, or red technique explosions timed to coincide with weapon impacts for massive damage boosts. The defensive applications of enhanced weaponry include the ability to parry and deflect attacks that would normally be impossible to counter. Spatial manipulation allows weapons to interact with energy-based attacks, magical projectiles, and even environmental hazards in ways that traditional weapons cannot. This creates unique defensive options that go beyond simple blocking or dodging. Weapon enhancement progression allows for gradual improvement of these unique properties throughout the character's development. Early stages provide basic cursed energy enhancement, while advanced levels unlock more sophisticated spatial manipulation effects and technique integration. This progression creates clear goals for character development while maintaining the complexity of the combat system. Equipment interactions affect weapon performance in various ways, creating meaningful choices for optimization. Certain rings enhance the effectiveness of technique channeling through weapons, while others improve the efficiency of spatial manipulation effects. Specific armor combinations provide bonuses to weapon-based spatial techniques, creating equipment synergies that go beyond simple stat bonuses. Boss encounter adaptations showcase how enhanced weaponry changes traditional combat approaches. Weapons capable of spatial manipulation can interact with boss mechanics in unique ways, potentially disrupting special attacks or creating openings that wouldn't normally exist. However, the resource costs and timing requirements ensure that these advantages require skill and strategy to utilize effectively. PvP weapon strategies create distinctive dynamics in player versus player combat. The unpredictable nature of spatially enhanced attacks forces opponents to adapt their defensive strategies, while the resource costs of these enhancements create risk-reward decisions for aggressive play. Experienced opponents learn to recognize the signs of technique-enhanced attacks and develop counter-strategies accordingly. The visual design of enhanced weapons reflects their supernatural properties without overwhelming Dark Souls 2's aesthetic. Subtle glowing effects, slight spatial distortions, and ethereal particle effects indicate the weapon's enhanced nature while maintaining the grounded, dark fantasy feel of the game world. Sound design emphasizes the reality-cutting nature of these weapons with distinctive audio cues for enhanced attacks. Crafting and upgrade systems for enhanced weapons require unique materials that reflect their supernatural nature. Rather than simple titanite upgrades, these weapons require materials related to spatial manipulation and cursed energy enhancement. This creates unique progression paths and resource management decisions that distinguish Gojo's equipment from traditional character builds. Move chain combinations allow for extended attack sequences that showcase the fluid integration of martial arts and spatial manipulation. These sequences require memorization and practice to execute effectively, creating a skill ceiling that rewards dedicated players while remaining accessible to newcomers. The combinations can be modified based on situation and opponent type, providing tactical depth. Environmental weapon interactions create unique opportunities in specific locations. Certain areas might enhance the effectiveness of spatial manipulation techniques, while others might interfere with precise control. Some environments provide opportunities for enhanced weapons to interact with the scenery itself, creating new tactical possibilities or shortcuts through careful application of reality-cutting techniques. The learning curve for mastering enhanced weapon combat is deliberately challenging, reflecting the complexity of combining martial arts with supernatural abilities. However, the systems are designed to be intuitive once understood, allowing players to gradually build proficiency while discovering new applications and combinations through experimentation. These weapon systems create combat experiences that feel authentically Gojo while respecting Dark Souls 2's tactical, positioning-based combat philosophy. The enhanced weapons provide new options and strategies without trivializing the game's core challenges, creating engaging gameplay that rewards skill and strategic thinking. The concept of fashion souls, choosing equipment based on aesthetic appeal rather than pure statistical optimization, takes on special significance when designing armor sets for Gojo Satoru. His iconic appearance and unique abilities require armor designs that capture his visual identity while providing meaningful mechanical benefits that reflect his supernatural capabilities. The integration of his signature blindfold and distinctive style creates opportunities for armor sets that function as both fashion statements and tactical equipment. The foundational armor concept revolves around Gojo's iconic teacher's uniform, reimagined as a functional armor set within Dark Souls 2's medieval fantasy setting. The base set would consist of a modified sorcerer's robe that maintains the distinctive high collar and dark coloration while incorporating subtle magical enhancements. The fabric itself would be woven with threads infused with spatial manipulation magic, providing resistance to various damage types while maintaining the flowing, elegant appearance that defines Gojo's style. The blindfold represents perhaps the most crucial piece of equipment in any Gojo-inspired build. Rather than a simple cosmetic accessory, the blindfold would function as a unique helmet-class item with extraordinary properties that justify its iconic status. When equipped, it provides significant bonuses to magical abilities while reducing physical vision in exchange for enhanced supernatural perception. This creates an interesting trade-off where players gain powerful magical enhancements but must adapt to altered visual information. Multiple blindfold variants would be available to accommodate different playstyles and progression levels. The basic white blindfold provides fundamental bonuses to spell power and casting speed while enabling the basic functions of the Six Eyes ability system. Advanced variants might be crafted from materials infused with boss souls, providing enhanced effects and additional magical properties. A legendary version could incorporate fragments of crystalline soul energy, representing the ultimate fusion of fashion and function. The mechanical effects of blindfold equipment create unique gameplay experiences that reflect Gojo's canonical fighting style. While wearing any blindfold variant, traditional visual targeting becomes limited, encouraging players to rely on the enhanced perception abilities provided by the Six Eyes system. This creates a distinctive play experience where players must learn to interpret enhanced magical information rather than relying on conventional visual cues. Blindfold progression allows for gradual adaptation to this unique visual system. Early versions provide basic enhanced perception while maintaining some traditional visual elements, allowing players to gradually acclimate to the altered interface. Advanced blindfolds progressively reduce traditional vision while enhancing magical sight, culminating in variants that completely transform how players perceive and interact with the game world. The high collar coat that forms the chest piece of Gojo's signature look translates into a unique armor design that provides balanced protection without sacrificing mobility. The coat's length and flowing design are maintained while incorporating subtle protective elements woven into the fabric itself. Rather than traditional metal plating, the protection comes from magical enhancement and spatial manipulation techniques integrated into the garment's construction. Color customization options allow players to personalize their Gojo-inspired appearance while maintaining the character's essential aesthetic elements. The base design supports various color schemes, from the traditional dark blue and black to alternative variants that might represent different aspects of his character or techniques. Special dye materials could be obtained through specific quest lines or challenging encounters, creating meaningful progression and cosmetic customization. Set bonuses for complete Gojo-inspired armor combinations provide significant mechanical advantages that justify the fashion choices. Wearing multiple pieces from the same thematic set enhances the effectiveness of spatial manipulation techniques, reduces resource costs for certain abilities, and provides unique defensive properties that reflect the integrated nature of Gojo's fighting style. These bonuses scale with the number of set pieces equipped, encouraging full thematic builds while allowing for tactical mixing and matching. The stat distribution effects of Gojo's armor sets reflect his balanced approach to combat and magic. Rather than providing massive bonuses to a single attribute, the sets offer moderate improvements across multiple stats that support his diverse fighting style. Intelligence and attunement receive the primary bonuses, supporting his magical abilities, while dexterity and endurance gains reflect his enhanced physical capabilities. Weight considerations for Gojo's armor sets prioritize mobility and casting speed over pure physical protection. The complete sets are designed to maintain fast roll speeds while providing meaningful defensive bonuses through magical enhancement rather than physical bulk. This design philosophy reflects Gojo's canonical fighting style, which emphasizes avoiding damage through technique rather than absorbing it through armor. Alternative armor variants accommodate different interpretations of Gojo's appearance and abilities. A more casual variant might emphasize his off-duty civilian clothes, providing different stat bonuses that support a more social or exploration-focused playstyle. Combat variants could incorporate more obvious protective elements while maintaining the essential visual character, supporting players who prefer more aggressive combat approaches. The crafting requirements for Gojo's signature equipment involve unique materials that reflect the supernatural nature of his abilities. Rather than simple metal and leather, these armor pieces require materials like crystallized soul energy, fabric woven with spatial magic, and accessories infused with enhanced perception enchantments. This creates unique crafting progression paths that distinguish these sets from traditional equipment. Upgrade paths for Gojo's armor sets follow progression systems that enhance both their protective properties and their unique magical effects. Standard upgrade materials improve basic defense values, while special enhancement items boost the effectiveness of integrated abilities like spatial manipulation bonuses or enhanced perception benefits. This dual upgrade system creates meaningful choices about resource allocation and character optimization. Visual effects integration makes Gojo's armor sets immediately recognizable while maintaining Dark Souls 2's aesthetic coherence. Subtle glowing effects around the blindfold and collar, minor spatial distortions around the edges of the coat, and ethereal particle effects during ability usage all contribute to a distinctive appearance that feels both powerful and authentic to the source material. Environmental interactions affect the appearance and effectiveness of Gojo's equipment in various ways. Certain magical environments might enhance the visual effects and stat bonuses provided by his armor, while others might interfere with or modify the equipment's properties. These interactions create location-specific considerations for equipment choice, while adding visual variety to the character's appearance. Mix and match compatibility allows players to combine elements of Gojo's signature look with other equipment for tactical or aesthetic purposes. The blindfold can be worn with any chest armor for mixed stat benefits, while the coat can be combined with different helm options for varied appearances. This flexibility supports player creativity while maintaining the core visual identity. The psychological impact of wearing Gojo's distinctive appearance affects both PvE and PvP encounters. NPCs might react differently to a character wearing the blindfold and coat, potentially offering unique dialogue or quest opportunities. In PvP situations, the distinctive appearance immediately signals to opponents that they're facing someone with access to unique abilities, creating psychological warfare opportunities. Gender and character creation adaptations ensure that Gojo's iconic look can be recreated regardless of player character choices. The armor sets are designed to maintain their essential visual character across different body types and character creation options, though certain details might be adjusted to accommodate different proportions while preserving the overall aesthetic impact. Legacy and progression systems allow players to unlock additional customization options and armor variants as they advance through the game and master Gojo's techniques. Completing certain challenges or achieving specific milestones might unlock special color variants, enhanced visual effects, or improved stat bonuses that reflect the character's growing mastery of their abilities. These armor and fashion systems create equipment choices that feel both mechanically meaningful and aesthetically authentic to Gojo's character, supporting the overall fantasy of playing as this iconic character while respecting Dark Souls 2's design principles and tactical depth. The magical system that supports Gojo Satoru's abilities within Dark Souls 2's framework requires extensive development across all 4 schools of magic, creating spell categories that authentically represent his diverse techniques while maintaining the tactical depth and resource management that define Souls combat. Each school of magic, sorceries, pyromancies, miracles, and hexes offers different aspects of Gojo's cursed technique arsenal, creating a comprehensive magical system that supports multiple playstyles and strategic approaches. Sorceries, spatial manipulation, and analysis. The sorcery school serves as the primary repository for Gojo's spatial manipulation techniques, housing the fundamental blue and red techniques that form the core of his offensive and defensive capabilities. These sorceries operate on principles of space-time manipulation rather than traditional elemental magic, creating unique mechanics that distinguish them from standard Dark Souls 2 spells. Basic blue sorceries focus on attractive force applications, starting with simple targeted pulls that draw single enemies toward the caster. Early versions have modest range and affect only lightweight enemies, while advanced variants can influence multiple targets simultaneously and affect even heavily armored opponents. The most powerful blue sorcery creates a sustained gravitational field that continuously draws enemies inward while dealing increasing damage the longer they remain within the effect radius. Red sorceries represent repulsive force techniques, beginning with targeted force blasts that push enemies away and deal modest damage. Intermediate versions create explosive bursts of kinetic energy that affect areas rather than single targets, while advanced red sorceries generate devastating force projections capable of breaking through heavy armor and magical barriers. The Pinnacle Red technique creates a tracking projectile of compressed spatial energy that explodes on impact with tremendous force. Combination sorceries blend blue and red techniques for enhanced effects, requiring dual casting or rapid sequence casting for proper execution. These represent some of the most complex spells in the game, offering tremendous power at the cost of significant resource investment and precise timing requirements. The ultimate combination technique, representing hollow purple, erases matter itself within a targeted area, dealing percentage-based damage that can threaten even the strongest bosses. Advanced spatial sorceries provide utility and tactical options beyond direct damage dealing. Teleportation spells allow for rapid repositioning, while dimensional anchor techniques prevent enemy movement abilities. Reality stabilization spells can counter other spatial manipulation effects, creating interesting dynamics in encounters with enemies who possess similar abilities. Pyromancies, cursed energy enhancement. The pyromancy school represents Gojo's cursed energy manipulation and enhancement techniques, focusing on abilities that amplify physical capabilities and provide sustained combat benefits. These pyromancies operate on principles of internal energy manipulation rather than external fire magic, though they maintain visual connections to traditional pyromancy through energy emanations and enhancement effects. Basic enhancement pyromancies provide temporary bonuses to physical capabilities, increasing movement speed, attack power, or defensive capabilities for limited durations. These serve as the foundation for Gojo's enhanced physical combat abilities, allowing him to compete effectively in close-quarters combat while providing tactical flexibility in various encounter types. Cursed energy projection pyromancies create external manifestations of internal power, generating protective barriers, offensive projectiles, and area control effects. These techniques bridge the gap between internal enhancement and external manipulation, providing versatile tools that can adapt to different tactical situations. Advanced reinforcement pyromancies provide more sophisticated enhancement effects, including the ability to enhance weapons with cursed energy for extended periods, create protective auras that affect allied players, and generate sustained enhancement effects that persist through multiple encounters. These techniques require significant investment but provide substantial long-term benefits. Ultimate cursed energy techniques represent the pinnacle of internal power manipulation, allowing for temporary transcendence of normal physical limitations. These pyromancies provide massive but brief enhancement effects that can turn the tide of challenging encounters at the cost of substantial resource expenditure and recovery periods. Miracles, Enhanced perception and protection. The Miracle School houses Gojo's 6 eyes abilities and protective techniques, focusing on enhanced perception, information gathering, and defensive capabilities. These miracles operate on principles of spiritual sight and divine protection, fitting naturally within Dark Souls 2's miracle framework while providing unique functionality. Basic perception miracles enhance visual and analytical capabilities, allowing players to see additional information about enemies, items, and environmental features. Early versions provide basic enhanced sight, while advanced variants unlock the full analytical capabilities of the 6 Eyes system. These miracles have long durations but significant soul costs, creating resource management decisions about when enhanced perception is most valuable. Protective miracles create various defensive effects that complement Gojo's spatial manipulation abilities. These include traditional damage reduction effects, status ailment resistance, and unique protective barriers that interact specifically with magical attacks. Advanced protective miracles can extend their effects to allied players, supporting cooperative gameplay. Analytical miracles provide detailed information about encountered enemies, magical effects, and environmental hazards. These techniques allow players to understand enemy weaknesses, predict upcoming attacks, and identify optimal tactical approaches for challenging encounters. The information provided scales with the miracle's level and the caster's faith investment. Divine intervention miracles represent the ultimate expression of protective and supportive magic, providing powerful effects that can rescue players from otherwise fatal situations. These include automatic resurrection effects, emergency teleportation, and protective barriers capable of withstanding even the most devastating attacks. Hexes, unlimited void and reality manipulation. The Hex School contains Gojo's most powerful and reality-altering techniques, including domain expansion variants and ultimate curse techniques. These hexes operate on principles that transcend normal magical categories, representing manipulation of reality itself rather than simple elemental or spiritual effects. Basic reality manipulation hexes provide minor alterations to local spacetime, creating tactical advantages through environmental modification. These include temporary terrain alteration, gravity manipulation in small areas, and minor time dilation effects that influence attack timing and movement speed. Domain projection hexes create limited versions of domain expansion effects, generating controlled areas where Gojo's will overrides local reality. These areas provide significant tactical advantages, but require substantial resource investment and have limited duration and range compared to true domain expansion. Void techniques represent hexes that manipulate nothingness itself, creating effects that bypass traditional magical resistances and defenses. These techniques are among the most powerful in the game, but come with correspondingly high costs and significant risks to the caster. The ultimate hex represents true domain expansion, unlimited void, creating the most powerful area control effect in the game. This technique requires extensive preparation and resource commitment, but provides overwhelming power that can resolve even the most challenging encounters. Spell progression and mastery systems. The progression system for Gojo's magical techniques involves multiple layers of development that reflect the complexity of mastering such diverse abilities. Basic spells become available through normal game progression and stat investment, while advanced techniques require specific quest completion, rare material gathering, or achievement of particular milestones. Technique mastery affects not only spell power, but also resource efficiency, casting speed, and the availability of advanced variants. Players can specialize in particular schools of magic for focused effectiveness or develop balanced capabilities across multiple schools for maximum versatility. Spell combination systems allow for the integration of techniques from different schools, creating hybrid effects that are more powerful than individual spells but require precise timing and resource management to execute effectively. These combinations represent the pinnacle of magical mastery and provide clear goals for advanced character development. The resource management aspects of this diverse spell system create interesting tactical decisions about spell selection, usage timing, and character build optimization. Players must balance immediate effectiveness against long-term sustainability while considering the situational advantages of different spell categories. These comprehensive spell systems provide the mechanical foundation for authentically representing Gojo's diverse magical capabilities while maintaining the strategic depth and balanced gameplay that define the Dark Souls experience. The introduction of Gojo Satoru's abilities into Dark Souls 2's combat system fundamentally alters both boss encounter dynamics and player versus player combat, creating new strategic possibilities while maintaining the tactical depth that defines the Souls experience. Understanding how these abilities interact with specific encounters reveals both the strengths and limitations of the Gojo build while highlighting the skill requirements for effective usage. Major boss encounter analysis. The Last Giant represents an interesting case study for how spatial manipulation changes traditional encounter design. Gojo's blue techniques can pull the boss's upper body closer during its ground slam attacks, creating opportunities for counterattacks that wouldn't normally exist. However, the giant's massive size and limited intelligence make it relatively resistant to the sensory overload effects that work against more sophisticated enemies. Red techniques prove more effective, as the explosive force can stagger the giant during specific animation windows, creating openings for sustained damage phases. The Pursuer encounter showcases how enhanced perception and spatial abilities interact with highly mobile boss fights. The Six Eyes provide early warning of the Pursuer's charging attacks and ballista positioning, while short-range teleportation allows for positioning that exploits the arena's ballistas more effectively than traditional dodging. The Pursuer's curse attacks are immediately visible through enhanced perception, allowing for preemptive countermeasures that transform this traditionally dangerous encounter. Flexile Sentry demonstrates how crowd control abilities change multi-enemy boss dynamics. Blue techniques can separate the two halves of the boss, preventing their coordinated attacks and allowing players to focus damage on one section at a time. The water level mechanics become less threatening when teleportation provides escape options from the flooding portions of the arena. However, the boss's resistance to mental effects limits the utility of some advanced techniques. The Ruined Sentinels encounter highlights both the strengths and weaknesses of the Gojo approach. Spatial manipulation allows for direct engagement with the upper-level Sentinels without requiring the traditional platform strategy, fundamentally changing the encounter's flow. However, the artificial nature of these constructs makes them highly resistant to perception-based attacks and sensory overload techniques, requiring reliance on more direct damage approaches. Lost Sinner presents unique challenges that test different aspects of Gojo's abilities. The darkness of the encounter becomes irrelevant with enhanced perception, while the Sinner's aggressive melee attacks can be countered through spatial repositioning. However, the Sinner's own magical abilities and high mobility create a more balanced encounter than many others, requiring careful resource management and tactical thinking. The Old Iron King demonstrates how environmental hazards interact with spatial manipulation. The lava pools that define this encounter can be temporarily bridged using spatial techniques, while the King's ranged attacks can be redirected through careful force manipulation. However, the massive scale of this boss and its environmental integration limit the effectiveness of some crowd control approaches. The Duke's Dear Freja encounter showcases how enhanced perception changes traditionally vision-based challenges. The ability to see through illusions and track the real boss among multiple spiders transforms this from a perception puzzle into a more straightforward combat encounter. However, the spider minion's resistance to area effects means that crowd control techniques must be used selectively rather than as universal solutions. New Game Plus considerations. The scaling challenges of New Game Plus cycles present interesting considerations for Gojo builds. While his techniques provide significant advantages in standard encounters, the increased enemy health and damage in NG Plus cycles require more strategic resource management and technique selection. The percentage-based damage of certain ultimate techniques becomes more valuable as enemy health pools expand, while the resource costs remain constant. Covenant integration affects boss strategies significantly. The Company of Champions Covenant's difficulty increases interestingly with Gojo's crowd control abilities, as the enhanced enemy aggression can be countered through spatial manipulation techniques. Conversely, some covenants provide access to summons or magical enhancements that complement Gojo's abilities in boss encounters. PvP combat dynamics. Player versus player combat with Gojo abilities creates entirely new meta considerations that fundamentally alter established PvP dynamics. The information advantage provided by enhanced perception means that traditional ambush and deception strategies become much less effective, while the spatial manipulation abilities force opponents to completely reconsider their positioning and movement strategies. The most immediate impact is on build diversity in PvP environments. Opponents facing a Gojo build must adapt their strategies to account for the possibility of spatial repositioning, crowd control effects, and predictive capabilities. This creates pressure toward more mobile, adaptable builds while potentially reducing the effectiveness of slower, heavily armored approaches. Invasion mechanics change significantly when spatial manipulation enters the equation. Traditional invasion strategies that rely on environmental positioning or ambush tactics become much less effective when the invader or host possesses teleportation abilities and enhanced perception. This shifts invasion dynamics toward more direct confrontation while creating new opportunities for creative positioning and tactical misdirection. The resource management aspect of Gojo's abilities becomes crucial in PvP encounters. While the techniques provide significant advantages, their costs mean that extended engagements favor opponents who can force resource expenditure without committing to decisive encounters. This creates interesting risk-reward dynamics where Gojo players must balance technique usage against resource conservation. Counter strategies for dealing with Gojo builds become essential knowledge for high-level PvP. Certain builds and techniques can exploit the weaknesses inherent in the Gojo approach, such as the vulnerability during technique setup phases or the resource dependencies that limit sustained combat effectiveness. Understanding these counters becomes crucial for maintaining balanced PvP environments. Arena combat applications. Structured arena combat presents different challenges than invasion-based PvP. The predictable environment and formal engagement rules create opportunities for more sophisticated technique usage while limiting some of the ambush tactics that characterize invasion scenarios. Arena matches often become tests of pure technical skill and resource management rather than environmental exploitation. The tournament implications of Gojo abilities create interesting considerations for competitive play. While the techniques provide significant advantages, their resource costs and learning curve requirements mean that mastery becomes a crucial factor in determining effectiveness. Tournament formats that allow for multiple matches favor builds with better resource sustainability over pure burst potential. Cooperative combat synergies. Cooperative play scenarios showcase different aspects of Gojo's abilities, particularly the supportive and tactical possibilities of spatial manipulation. The ability to reposition allies, control enemy movement, and provide enhanced battlefield awareness creates team dynamics that go beyond simple damage dealing or traditional support roles. The coordination requirements for effective cooperative Gojo play are substantial. Team members must understand and adapt to the spatial manipulation effects, learning to position for maximum benefit from crowd control techniques while avoiding interference with spatial repositioning abilities. This creates a higher skill ceiling for cooperative play while providing correspondingly greater tactical possibilities. Meta evolution and community impact. The introduction of Gojo's abilities would inevitably affect the broader Dark Souls 2 community and competitive scene. Build diversity would shift as players adapt to the new possibilities and threats, while new strategies and counter-strategies would emerge through community experimentation and refinement. The learning curve for both playing as and against Gojo builds creates interesting community dynamics. New players might be attracted by the powerful abilities while being overwhelmed by the complexity, while veteran players would need to adapt established strategies to account for the new variables introduced by spatial manipulation and enhanced perception. Content creation opportunities arise from the unique gameplay possibilities that Gojo abilities introduce. Challenge runs, creative strategies, and detailed analysis of technique optimization all provide material for community content while helping to develop and refine the most effective approaches to using these complex abilities. These combat applications demonstrate how Gojo's abilities can be integrated into Dark Souls 2's existing systems while maintaining the strategic depth and skill requirements that define the Souls experience. The key is ensuring that power comes with proportional costs and limitations that preserve the tactical decision-making that makes these games compelling. The character progression system for a Gojo Satoru build in Dark Souls 2 requires careful orchestration across multiple interconnected advancement tracks, creating a development path that authentically captures the gradual mastery of incredibly complex abilities while maintaining meaningful progression goals throughout the character's journey. This isn't simply about leveling up. It's about representing the intricate process of mastering reality-altering techniques that exist at the very limits of possibility. Foundation building. Early game progression, SL1 to 60. The early stages of character development focus on establishing the fundamental capabilities that make Gojo's advanced techniques possible. During this phase, players must carefully balance immediate survival needs against long-term optimization goals, as the complex stat requirements for advanced abilities require significant planning and resource allocation. Attunement receives priority investment during early progression, as it provides the agility necessary for defensive maneuvering while offering the spell slots required for basic technique usage. The target for this phase is 30 attunement, providing sufficient spell slots for a basic technique loadout, while achieving decent agility for defensive rolling and animation speed. Intelligence development proceeds in parallel with attunement, focusing on reaching the minimum requirements for basic spatial manipulation techniques. Early blue and red sorceries become available around 20 to 25 intelligence, providing the foundation for Gojo's signature abilities while offering immediate tactical benefits that justify the stat investment. Vigor investment ensures survival during the challenging early game period when advanced defensive techniques aren't yet available. The initial target is 20 Vigor, providing sufficient health to survive mistakes while learning the complex timing requirements of advanced techniques. This investment also supports the experimentation necessary for mastering the unique mechanics of the Gojo build. Equipment acquisition during early progression focuses on items that support the developing ability set rather than providing immediate power. The basic blindfold variant becomes available through specific quest completion, providing early access to enhanced perception abilities. Similarly, weapons capable of cursed energy enhancement can be obtained through careful exploration and NPC interaction. Capability expansion, mid-game development, SL 60 to 120. The mid-game phase represents the period where Gojo's abilities begin to reach their potential, with sufficient stat investment to support more sophisticated techniques while maintaining effectiveness across diverse encounter types. This phase requires balancing specialization with versatility as more advanced techniques become available. Advanced spatial manipulation techniques become accessible as intelligence approaches 40 to 50. This threshold unlocks the intermediate blue and red techniques that define Gojo's combat effectiveness, including area of effect variance and combination casting possibilities. The increased spell power also makes techniques viable against the stronger enemies encountered in mid-game areas. Faith investment begins during this phase to support the perception-based miracles that represent the Six Eyes abilities. The target is 30 to 40 faith, sufficient for advanced analytical capabilities while providing access to protective miracles that complement the spatial manipulation abilities. This investment also supports hybrid offensive techniques that combine different magical schools. Endurance development becomes crucial as combat encounters grow more demanding and technique usage increases. The target is 40 endurance, providing sufficient stamina for extended combat sequences while supporting the aggressive, mobile combat style that characterizes effective Gojo play. Equipment specialization accelerates during mid-game progression. Advanced blindfold variants become available through boss soul, trading, or complex crafting processes, providing enhanced Six Eyes functionality. Similarly, weapons and armor pieces that specifically support technique usage can be obtained through challenging encounters or special quest lines. Mastery achievement, late game optimization, SL 120 to 200. Late game progression focuses on achieving mastery across all aspects of Gojo's abilities while optimizing for specific encounter types or playstyle preferences. This phase involves pushing key stats to their soft caps while fine-tuning the character's capabilities for maximum effectiveness. Intelligence reaches its optimal range of 50 to 60, maximizing the power of spatial manipulation techniques while providing access to the most advanced sorceries in Gojo's arsenal. This investment also supports the intelligent scaling weapons that become available in late-game areas. Attunement continues to receive investment, targeting 60+ 4 maximum spell slots and agility. This high attunement also supports the resource-intensive ultimate techniques that become available during late-game progression, including domain expansion variants that require enormous spell slot allocation. Secondary stat optimization begins to take priority as primary stats approach their caps. Dexterity investment improves casting speed and weapon effectiveness, while Vitality provides equipment load flexibility and status resistance. These investments provide polish to the character's capabilities rather than fundamental new abilities. Advanced Technique unlocking represents the primary progression goal during this phase. Techniques like Reversal Red and Domain Expansion require not just stat investment, but completion of specific challenges, acquisition of rare materials, and demonstration of mastery over prerequisite abilities. Ultimate Techniques, Domain Expansion Unlock. The unlock path for Domain Expansion represents the most complex progression challenge in the entire build, requiring convergence of multiple advancement tracks and demonstration of comprehensive mastery. This isn't simply about reaching certain stat thresholds. It requires understanding and proficiency across all aspects of Gojo's abilities. Prerequisite mastery involves demonstrating competency with all major technique categories. Players must successfully use blue techniques for crowd control, red techniques for offense, combination techniques for area denial, and protective abilities for defense in specific, challenging encounters. This ensures that domain expansion users understand the fundamental abilities that the ultimate technique builds upon. Material requirements for domain expansion involve rare items that can only be obtained through specific quest lines or challenging encounters. These might include crystallized soul fragments from major bosses, spatial anchor stones from hidden locations, or blessed materials obtained through completion of perception-based challenges that test Six Eyes mastery. The learning process for domain expansion involves multiple stages of partial access before full technique availability. Early stages might allow for limited reality manipulation in small areas, while intermediate phases provide access to the crowd control aspects without the full sensory overload effects. This graduated approach allows players to acclimate to the technique's complexity while providing clear progression goals. Equipment evolution and enhancement. The equipment upgrade paths for Gojo builds follow unique progression tracks that enhance both the effectiveness of individual pieces and their integration with the overall ability set. This goes beyond simple stat improvements to encompass fundamental changes in how equipment interacts with techniques. Blindfold progression represents one of the most important equipment advancement paths. Basic variants provide fundamental Six Eyes functionality, while advanced versions unlock enhanced analytical capabilities, improve perception range, and integration with other techniques. The ultimate blindfold variants provide access to predictive capabilities and reality sight that transform how players interact with the game world. Weapon enhancement follows paths that increase both physical effectiveness and technique integration capabilities. Early stages provide basic cursed energy enhancement, while advanced levels unlock the ability to channel specific techniques through weapon attacks. The ultimate weapon upgrades allow for seamless integration between martial combat and spatial manipulation. Armor set development focuses on improving the magical enhancement properties while maintaining the aesthetic integrity of Gojo's signature appearance. Advanced armor sets provide better protection through magical means while enhancing the effectiveness of various technique categories. Complete set bonuses become available that provide unique capabilities not accessible through individual pieces. Ring optimization and synergy development. Ring selection and optimization becomes increasingly important as the character develops, with specific combinations providing synergistic effects that enhance overall effectiveness. The 4 ring slots become crucial for maximizing the potential of the complex ability set while addressing the build's inherent weaknesses. Essential ring categories include casting enhancement rings that improve spell speed and power, resource management rings that reduce technique costs or improve regeneration, defensive rings that provide protection against the build's vulnerabilities, and utility rings that enhance mobility or provide specific tactical advantages. Advanced ring combinations create effects that are greater than the sum of their parts. Certain combinations might reduce the setup time for ultimate techniques, provide enhanced resource regeneration during specific conditions, or unlock unique casting options that aren't available with individual rings. Covenant integration and specialized development. Covenant selection affects character development in ways that go beyond simple PvP considerations. Different covenants provide access to unique spells, equipment, and advancement opportunities that can significantly alter the character's capabilities and development path. The Pilgrims of Dark Covenant provides access to unique hexes that might represent darker aspects of Gojo's abilities, while the Dragon Remnants Covenant offers enhancement options that reflect transcendence of normal human limitations. The Blue Sentinels Covenant provides protective magic that aligns with Gojo's role as protector of others. Covenant rank progression unlocks increasingly powerful benefits, from basic spell access at early ranks to unique equipment and advanced techniques at maximum rank. This provides long-term progression goals that extend beyond simple stat advancement while offering meaningful choices about character development direction. New Game Plus scaling and continued development. The progression systems continue to provide meaningful advancement opportunities even into New Game Plus cycles, with enhanced enemies requiring continued optimization and technique refinement. NG Plus progression focuses on perfecting execution, optimizing resource usage, and exploring advanced application of mastered techniques. Enemy scaling in higher NG cycles makes percentage-based damage techniques more valuable while increasing the importance of precision and efficiency in technique usage. This creates continued pressure for improvement and optimization even after achieving basic mastery of all abilities. Advanced challenge completion in NG Plus cycles provides access to unique rewards and recognition of exceptional mastery. These challenges might involve defeating specific bosses using only certain technique categories or completing encounters within strict resource limitations. These comprehensive progression systems create a character development experience that remains engaging and meaningful throughout hundreds of hours of gameplay, while authentically representing the complexity and depth of mastering Gojo's incredible abilities. As we reach the end of our comprehensive exploration of Gojo Satoru as a Dark Souls 2 character, it's worth reflecting on what this analysis has revealed about the intersection of these two beloved franchises and the broader implications of translating characters across vastly different fictional universes. What began as a thought experiment about bringing anime's most overpowered sorcerer into gaming's most punishing medieval fantasy has evolved into something far more sophisticated, a complete reimagining of what it means to possess ultimate power in a world where death is both inevitable and educational. The synthesis of power and vulnerability. Perhaps the most fascinating aspect of our Gojo translation has been the way it maintains the character's overwhelming power while respecting Dark Souls 2's fundamental philosophy that strength without wisdom is meaningless. Every ability we've designed comes with costs, limitations, and strategic considerations that prevent the character from becoming a simple power fantasy. The Six Eyes provide incredible perception but require adaptation to altered visual systems. Spatial manipulation offers reality-bending possibilities, but demands careful resource management. Even domain expansion, the ultimate expression of Gojo's power, requires extensive preparation and carries significant risks. This balance reflects something profound about both source materials. Gojo's character arc in Jujutsu Kaisen isn't really about having unlimited power. It's about the isolation, responsibility, and moral complexity that comes with being capable of changing the world through individual action. Dark Souls 2, meanwhile, isn't primarily about mechanical difficulty. It's about perseverance, learning from failure, and finding meaning in struggle. Our translation captures both themes by creating a character who possesses incredible capabilities but must still engage meaningfully with the world's challenges and limitations. Mechanical innovation and design philosophy. The mechanical systems we've developed for this analysis represent some of the most complex character design work possible within Dark Souls 2's framework. The Six Eyes perception system creates entirely new ways of processing game information, while the spatial manipulation mechanics introduce concepts that stretch the boundaries of what's possible in the game's physics engine. Yet every system respects the fundamental design principles that make Dark Souls 2 compelling. Meaningful choices, resource management, risk versus reward, and the importance of player skill and understanding. The spell categorization across 4 schools of magic demonstrates how complex character abilities can be distributed across existing systems without overwhelming any single category. The progression systems show how gradual mastery can be implemented in ways that maintain engagement across hundreds of hours of gameplay. The equipment and fashion integration proves that aesthetic authenticity and mechanical depth aren't mutually exclusive goals. These innovations don't just serve the specific goal of translating Gojo. They suggest broader possibilities for how character abilities could be implemented in similar games. The perception enhancement systems could support other characters with analytical abilities. The spatial manipulation mechanics could be adapted for different types of reality-altering powers. The resource management frameworks could accommodate various supernatural abilities that require strategic usage rather than simple button mashing. Community and cultural impact. Throughout this analysis, we've considered how introducing Gojo's abilities would affect Dark Souls 2's vibrant community and competitive scene. The implications go far beyond simple balance concerns to encompass fundamental questions about how gaming communities adapt to new possibilities and challenges. The learning curve for mastering Gojo's abilities would create natural skill stratification within the community. New players might be attracted by the powerful techniques while being overwhelmed by their complexity, creating opportunities for experienced players to serve as mentors and guides. The counter strategies required to deal with spatial manipulation would force innovation and adaptation across the entire competitive scene. The fashion and aesthetic aspects of the character would undoubtedly influence how players approach character creation and equipment selection. Gojo's distinctive appearance would become a recognizable symbol within the community, creating instant recognition and certain expectations about player skill and approach. This cultural impact demonstrates how character design extends beyond mere mechanics to encompass social and aesthetic dimensions. Narrative and lore integration. One of our key objectives throughout this analysis has been ensuring that Gojo's presence in Drangleic feels authentic to both source materials rather than forced or artificial. The lore integration we've developed positions him not as an outsider imposing foreign concepts, but as someone whose abilities and background find natural resonance within Dark Souls 2's existing mythology. The connection between Jujutsu sorcery and Drangleic's magical traditions creates opportunities for deeper exploration of both universes' fundamental concepts. The parallel between cursed spirits and the various supernatural threats that plague Drangleic suggests common underlying themes about humanity's struggle against forces that represent our own fears and negative emotions. Gojo's role as someone who stands between ordinary people and supernatural threats aligns perfectly with the chosen undead's mission to preserve what remains of human civilization. The environmental storytelling possibilities we've explored throughout our analysis demonstrate how character integration can enhance rather than dilute a game's narrative depth. Evidence of Gojo's passage through Drangleic would add layers of interpretation to existing lore while providing new perspectives on familiar locations and characters. Technical achievement and implementation challenges. From a purely technical standpoint, implementing the systems we've described would represent a significant achievement in game design and programming. The Six Eyes perception system would require fundamental modifications to the game's interface and information processing systems. The spatial manipulation mechanics would need new physics calculations and visual effects that go beyond anything currently present in the Souls series. The real-time analysis and prediction systems that support the enhanced perception abilities would require sophisticated AI integration that could analyze enemy states, player actions, and environmental conditions to provide the tactical information that makes the Six Eyes meaningful. The spatial manipulation effects would need physics calculations that could handle the complex interactions between attraction, repulsion, and reality modification in ways that feel consistent and predictable. Yet these technical challenges also represent opportunities for innovation and advancement in game design. The solutions developed for implementing Gojo's abilities could have applications across numerous other projects and genres. The interface design principles for enhanced perception could benefit accessibility features in many games. The resource management systems could provide frameworks for other complex character abilities, balance, and competitive considerations. Throughout our analysis, we've been careful to consider how Gojo's abilities would affect competitive balance in both PvE and PvP contexts. While the character possesses incredible power, every ability comes with costs, limitations, and counter strategies that maintain competitive viability for other builds and approaches. The resource management systems ensure that even the most powerful techniques can't be used carelessly or repeatedly without consequence. The timing requirements and setup phases create windows of vulnerability that skilled opponents can exploit. The information advantages provided by enhanced perception are significant, but not insurmountable for players who understand how to adapt their strategies accordingly. The progression requirements for accessing ultimate techniques like domain expansion ensure that these abilities remain rare and meaningful rather than becoming common elements that warp the entire game balance. The skill ceiling for effective usage means that possessing the abilities doesn't guarantee success without corresponding player development and understanding. Future possibilities and expansion. The framework we've established for Gojo's abilities creates possibilities for future expansion and development that could extend the character concept far beyond its initial implementation. Additional technique variants could be unlocked through special quest lines or challenging achievements. New equipment sets could provide alternative interpretations of his abilities or support different playstyle approaches. The progression systems we've developed could accommodate continued advancement even into very high-level play, with master-tier techniques that require demonstration of exceptional skill and understanding. Seasonal events or special challenges could provide opportunities for players to test their mastery against unique encounters designed specifically for Gojo's abilities. The community content possibilities are enormous. Player-created challenges that test specific aspects of technique mastery, community tournaments that showcase the highest levels of play, detailed guides and analysis that help new players understand the complex systems. All of these represent opportunities for the community to engage with and expand upon the foundation we've established. The progression systems show how character growth can remain meaningful and engaging across extended play periods without becoming overwhelming or trivial. The resource management frameworks demonstrate how powerful abilities can be implemented without breaking game balance. The aesthetic integration proves that character authenticity and mechanical depth can be achieved simultaneously. Personal reflection and community engagement. Creating this analysis has been an incredible journey through the intersection of two franchises that have meant so much to their respective communities. The process has required deep engagement with both source materials, careful consideration of mechanical complexity, and constant attention to how different elements would interact to create a cohesive, engaging experience. The response from our Psych to Sleep community has been overwhelming, with viewers contributing ideas, suggestions, and insights that have enriched every aspect of our analysis. The collaborative nature of this exploration demonstrates how community engagement can enhance and deepen creative projects while building connections between people who share passion for these incredible fictional worlds. Looking forward, as we conclude this extensive analysis, it's worth considering what comes next. The framework we've established could serve as the foundation for actually implementing these systems through modding or fan game development. The community interest suggests that there's appetite for exploring similar character translations from other franchises. More broadly, this project demonstrates the value of deep, analytical engagement with the media we love. By taking the time to really understand how different fictional universes work and how they might interact, we create opportunities for new insights, creative expression, and community building that go far beyond simple entertainment consumption. The marriage of Gojo Satoru's reality-bending abilities with Dark Souls 2's challenging, tactical gameplay creates something that neither source material could achieve independently. A character experience that honors both franchises while opening up entirely new possibilities for how we think about power, responsibility, and the meaning of struggle. Whether you're here for the detailed mechanical analysis, the creative speculation, or simply the joy of imagining your favorite anime character in a beloved game series. I hope this exploration has provided something valuable. The intersection of different fictional universes offers endless possibilities for creativity, analysis, and community engagement. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the cursed lands of Drangliak alongside the strongest sorcerer in the Jujutsu world. The combination of infinite power and inevitable struggle, of overwhelming ability and meaningful limitation, creates a character experience that truly embodies the best of both universes while suggesting new possibilities for how we engage with the characters and stories we love. Until next time, keep exploring the infinite possibilities that emerge when different worlds collide. And remember that even the strongest characters are defined not by their power, but by how they choose to use it. Sweet dreams, and may your adventures in whatever universe you choose to explore be filled with discovery, challenge, and the satisfaction that comes from truly understanding the depths of the stories we cherish.